I weaponized my boyfriend's sexual stamina against him, and now people think I'm the victim of some cruel joke. I'm not. I made him believe his greatest asset was a defect, and I'm more culpable than anyone knows. What they don't get is that watching someone you love perform for 90 minutes while you fake your way through the third act isn't a flex, it's relationship rot. I was losing my mind, and in trying to fix it, I shattered his confidence completely. The stakes weren't just our sex life, it was his entire sense of self-worth, our shared history, the foundation we'd built across 5 years. I'll confess everything: the spreadsheet, the Reddit post, the thing I said to his sister. By the end, you'll understand why he now finishes before I've even found my rhythm, and why I deserve every second of this miserable aftermath. I met Marcus at a brand strategy conference where he'd built an algorithm to optimize user engagement. While everyone else networked over cheap Chardonnay, he explained how he could predict customer behavior patterns with 94 accuracy. I was sold, not on the software, but on the way his mind worked. Everything was systems, inputs and outputs, performance metrics. He applied this to our relationship with such devotion that I never saw the trap until I'd already sprung it. Our first year was data-driven bliss. He remembered my cycle better than I did, anticipated my PMS cravings, tracked which date nights yielded the best emotional ROI. When we moved in together, he bought a whiteboard for our kitchen where we'd map out monthly goals. It was adorable. The sex was incredible, too, at first. He approached it with the same methodical patience he applied to debugging code. I felt cherished, attended to, fully optimized for pleasure. My friends called him the Marathon Man when I bragged about his dedication, and I beamed like I'd won some cosmic lottery. I didn't know I was building a pedestal so high that any criticism would become a deadly fall. The trouble started during year 3, when my work stress spiked. My agency landed a nightmare client who demanded 27 rounds of revisions on a single banner ad. I'd come home exhausted, wanting connection without performance pressure. But Marcus had logged our intimacy metrics and noticed a dip in frequency. He responded by doubling down on his efforts. What had once been passionate became a procedural nightmare. 90-minute sessions where he'd watch my face for feedback signals while I tried to mentally draft email copy. I started avoiding bedtime, working late, faking headaches. He'd check his heart rate monitor afterward and ask if we'd hit our target satisfaction scores. One night, after he'd been going for 70 minutes and I'd faked my third orgasm just to give him permission to finish, I snapped. "Marcus, baby, I love you, but sometimes I wish you'd just hurry the hell up." His face did something I'd never seen before, like I deleted his entire hard drive with a single keystroke. He went quiet for 3 days. I told myself it was fine, that honesty was healthy, that he'd adjust like he always did. I didn't realize I'd just attacked the core of his masculine identity, the one thing he'd always been proud of. My best friend Jenna took me out for cocktails when I confessed I was avoiding sex. "Girl, you realize most women would kill for that problem, right?" She laughed into her margarita, thinking I was humble bragging. I showed her the whiteboard where Marcus had started tracking his improvement times, each entry marked with a sad face emoji getting progressively smaller. "It's not funny," I insisted. "It's like being trapped in a spin class you can never leave." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That night I posted on our relationships using a throwaway account. I detailed Marcus's performance optimization with the clinical detachment of a creative brief. I didn't use his name, but I included specifics: the heart rate monitor, the whiteboard, the way he'd ask for my satisfaction rating on a scale of 1 to 10. The post blew up. Comments poured in calling me ungrateful, telling me I was damaging him psychologically. One user wrote, "You're measuring his love in minutes instead of feeling it in moments." I deleted the post, but not before taking screenshots to show Marcus. "See," I'd thought, "see how unreasonable you're being." I was building my case like it was a client presentation, gathering evidence to support my complaint. The dramatic irony was excruciating. I thought I was the victim of his obsession, when really I was becoming obsessed with his failure. The truth bomb dropped on a Tuesday. Marcus came home early and found me on the phone with my mother, complaining about his stamina issues in graphic detail. I'd been doing this for months, turning our intimate life into dinner party fodder, therapist material, podcast anecdotes. His sister had heard about it from our aunt. His college roommate knew because I'd vented to his girlfriend. I'd created a narrative where Marcus was the broken one, the man who couldn't get it right, and I'd shared it with our entire extended network. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the spreadsheet I'd been keeping on my work laptop. Column A: date. Column B start time, column C duration, column D my actual satisfaction 1-10, column E faked it, YN, column F his performance notes. I'd been logging our sex life like market research data, complete with pivot tables analyzing trends. When Marcus discovered it, he'd grabbed my laptop to show me a funny video while I was in the shower. He didn't yell. He just stood there, scrolling through 18 months of quantified intimacy, his face draining of color. You turned us into a case study, he whispered. You shared this with people. I stammered something about needing perspective, about how his obsession with optimization had forced me into analysis mode. But we both knew the truth. I'd weaponized his vulnerability, the one thing he'd trusted me with completely. His confidence didn't just break that day, it atomized. The consequences came in waves. Marcus stopped initiating entirely. He removed the whiteboard, but the blank space on the wall became more accusatory than any data set. He started sleeping in his home office, claiming he had late calls with the West Coast team. I knew he was lying because I checked his calendar, something I'd never done before, but my paranoia was metastasizing. When I tried to talk about it, he'd give me these calm, measured responses that felt like corporate PR statements. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I'll take it under advisement. He started taking long runs at 5 a.m., returning sweat-soaked and silent. I found a prescription bottle in his gym bag rise, known side effect of delayed ejaculation, but he'd been prescribed them for performance anxiety. The doctor's note was dated the week after I'd complained to his sister. He'd told his physician he was experiencing severe sexual performance stress and needed help. The medication he'd been given was actually making him last longer, but he'd started lying on his data tracking, telling me he'd finished when he hadn't, rushing to the bathroom to handle things himself so I wouldn't have to endure another session. I'd created a feedback loop of shame, so intense he'd rather deceive me than disappoint me again. Our breaking point arrived during what I now call the intervention that wasn't. Jenna showed up at our door on a Saturday morning with Marcus's sister, Tara, in tow. We're worried about him, Jenna said, pushing past me into the living room where Marcus was working. He's not himself. Tara had tears in her eyes. He called me last night saying he was defective, that he should just be alone so he doesn't burden anyone. I stood there frozen as they comforted him, telling him he was perfect, that there was nothing wrong with him, that the problem was me, my expectations, my inability to appreciate what I had. Marcus let them stroke his hair and bring him tea, never once defending me. When they left, he turned to me with eyes that looked 1,000 years old. They don't know the spreadsheet exists, he said flatly. They think you're just a selfish girlfriend who got bored. Should I tell them? It was the first time he'd ever threatened me, and it wasn't with violence, it was with truth. I begged him not to, promised I'd delete it, swore I'd never speak about our sex life again. He nodded, but the damage was permanent. That night I caught him crying in the shower, the sound muffled by water but the pain unmistakable. He'd always been my rock, my stable data point in a chaotic world, and I'd turned his strength into a source of humiliation. The question he asked through the bathroom door, did you ever actually love me, or was I just a project? Still echoes in my dreams. The worst truth, the one I'd been hiding even from myself, came out during our final therapy session. Marcus had agreed to couples counseling only if I found the therapist, and I chose Dr. Chen because her website emphasized communication optimization. I thought she'd validate my perspective. Instead, she spent 6 weeks digging into my behavior patterns. When she asked me to read aloud from my intimacy journal, the sanitized name I'd given the spreadsheet, I broke down, but not out of shame, out of anger. He made me this way, I screamed. His need to be perfect, his obsession with my satisfaction, he left me no room to be honest. Dr. Chen leaned forward and asked the question that cracked everything open, is that really why you kept the spreadsheet, to be honest? Or did you create it because you knew, deep down, that complaining about his stamina was like complaining that someone loves you too much, and you needed data to justify your cruelty? The silence in that room was absolute, because she was right. The spreadsheet hadn't been about tracking his performance. It had been about proving to myself that my resentment was valid, that I wasn't the villain in my own story. I'd been logging every encounter not to help him improve, but to build a case for my own dissatisfaction, to turn a non-problem into data that supported my growing contempt. I'd resented his love, his patience, his willingness to give me everything, because it reminded me that I was incapable of receiving it. The 2-minute problem, that started the night I screamed at him that he was a sex robot with no intuition. He'd taken it literally. He'd researched premature ejaculation techniques, pressure points, mental distractions, biofeedback, and he'd practiced them in secret, determined to become what I wanted, a man who didn't care about my pleasure, who used me and moved on. He'd become the selfish lover I'd pretended to want, because being called a robot was less painful than being called too much. The aftermath was a masterclass in social nuclear fallout. Marcus moved out while I was at work, leaving only the whiteboard with a single data point written in the center, days until I feel human again. His sister returned my calls with two-word texts. Jenna posted a photo of her boyfriend recovery brunch with Marcus tagged, his smile looking genuine for the first time in months. The Reddit post I deleted. Someone had archived it and shared it on a subreddit about toxic relationships. It had 40,000 upvotes. My name wasn't on it, but our story was specific enough that colleagues recognized it. At my agency, the creative director pulled me aside and said, "I saw your post, not a good look for the brand." I was reassigned to smaller accounts, my upward trajectory stalled by my own digital footprint. Worse, I discovered Marcus had been telling his version, not vindictively, but honestly, to anyone who'd listen. I became the woman who treated love like a quarterly report. The twist I didn't see coming. His new girlfriend posted a TikTok about the best 45 minutes of her life that went viral, and Marcus commented with a laughing emoji. The internet congratulated him for finding someone who appreciated his gift. My DMs filled with strangers telling me I'd fumbled the bag, but the most devastating consequence was internal. I started logging my own behavior. Every interaction, every relationship, every moment of intimacy, I found myself reaching for metrics, trying to optimize my way back to trust. I'd become the thing I resented, a machine analyzing love instead of feeling it. The person who got hurt most by my continued deception was me, because I'd convinced myself that vulnerability was a bug, not a feature. I'm telling this story now because yesterday, Marcus announced his engagement to the TikTok girl. Someone sent me the video, her radiant face, his genuine smile, the caption, 3 years of perfect timing. I sat in my apartment, opened a blank spreadsheet, and for the first time in 2 years I started to type. But instead of logging duration or satisfaction, I wrote what I'd actually been measuring all along: my own fear of being loved properly. Fear of dependency. Fear of the quiet safety Marcus offered, which felt like stagnation to my ambition-addled brain. I thought I wanted passion, urgency, quick hits of validation. I told myself his stamina was the problem, but the truth is, his patience forced me to confront my own inability to be present. I optimized him out of my life because I couldn't optimize my own fear away. What I've learned, if you can call it learning, is that some problems can't be solved with better communication or couples therapy or even SSRIs. Some problems require you to sit in the discomfort of being loved exactly as you need, even when it doesn't look like what you thought you wanted. I don't have a neat resolution. I still check his fiance's social media. I still compare my current dates to his metrics. I still want to call him and explain that the spreadsheet was really a diary of my own brokenness. But I don't, because the moral ambiguity is the point. I was both victim and perpetrator, honest and cruel, justified and unforgivable. So here's my question for you: if you could have 90 minutes of someone's complete devotion, or 2 minutes of their honest urgency, which would you choose? And more importantly, would you have the wisdom to know the difference before you destroy the man offering you everything?